Happy birthday, Dad Mahan. 90 years is a gift from God. Some key events that took place in your lifetime. In 1921, James Mahan is born in St. Louis, Missouri. In 1922, the USSR is formed and King Tut's tomb is discovered. In 1923, Time magazine is first published and the country of Turkey is formed. In 1924, the FBI is formed. In 1927, world population reaches 2 billion people and Saudi Arabia becomes an independent nation. In 1928, penicillin is discovered. In 1929, Wall Street crashes and the Great Depression begins. Also, the Academy Awards begins. In 1930, Pluto is discovered. In 1931, the construction of the Empire State Building begins in New York City, and China becomes a communist country. In 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt becomes President of the United States, and the neutron is discovered. In 1934, Adolf Hitler becomes the leader of Germany. In 1936, the Hoover Dam is completed in Nevada. In 1937, World War II begins in the Far East, and with the invasion of China by the Japanese, and George Gershwin dies. In 1940, James and Elizabeth Mahan get married. In 1941, Pearl Harbor is bombed and the United States enters World War II. In 1942, Catherine Mahan is born. In 1944, D-Day landings in France during World War II begins. In 1945, World War II ends and James Mahan Jr. is born. In 1946, Irvin Mahan is born and the first images of Earth are taken from space. In 1947, the CIA is founded. In 1949, China becomes the People's Republic of China, and NATO is founded. In 1950, Jerome Mahan is born. In 1952, Marcia Mahan is born, and coincidentally, Queen Elizabeth II becomes the monarch of Great Britain. In 1953, DNA is discovered and the polio vaccine. People begin to climb Mount Everest, and Joseph Stalin dies. In 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court decides on Brown versus the Board of Education, ending racial segregation in U.S. schools, and the Soviet Union generates electricity using nuclear power. In 1957, the space age begins with the launch by the Soviet Union of Sputnik 1. The Treaty of Rome is established that leads to the eventual founding of the European Union. In 1958, NASA is founded. Optical discs and cassette tapes are created. In 1959, Alaska and Hawaii are admitted into the United States. The first documented cases of HIV/AIDS are discovered, and the Vietnam War begins. In 1960, world population reaches 3 billion people. In 1961, the construction of the Berlin Wall begins, and manned space flight begins. In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis occurs and the Beatles record their first song. In 1963, Martin Luther King delivers I Have a Dream speech, and John F. Kennedy is assassinated, and satellites are launched into space. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act is put into law, and Edward Mahan is born. In 1965, Winston Churchill and Malcolm X die. In 1968, Martin Luther King is assassinated. In 1969, the moon landings begin and the internet, or .com, begins. In 1970, the 747 takes its first flight and Jimi Hendrix dies. In 1971, the microchip is invented. In 1973, Watergate occurs. The U.S. Supreme Court decides on Roe v. Wade. Pablo Picasso dies, and the first images of Jupiter are seen. In 1974, the first close-up images of Mercury are seen, and world population reaches 4 billion people. In 1975, the Vietnam War ends. In 1977, personal computers are produced. In 1978, insulin is created, and the birth of the first test tube baby occurs. In 1979, the Soviets invade Afghanistan, and Pope John Paul II arrives in Poland, starting the Solidarity movement. Skylab is launched, and the first close-up images of Saturn are seen, China implements its one-child policy. 1980, Ronald Reagan is elected President of the United States. In 1981, the space shuttle begins to orbit Earth. In 1983, GPS becomes available for civilian use. In 1985, DNA is used for fingerprinting. In 1987, the stock market crashes and world population reaches 5 billion people. In 1989, the Berlin Wall falls and the collapse of communism in Europe. The first close-up pictures of Neptune are seen. In 1990, the World Wide Web is invented. In 1992, the European Union is created. In 1994, apartheid ends and NAFTA is formed. In 1997, Great Britain returns Hong Kong to Chinese rule. In 1998, Osama bin Laden declares war against the West. In 1999, the euro is established and Hugo Chavez becomes president of Venezuela. World population reaches 6 billion people. In 2000, George W. Bush is elected president of the United States and Vladimir Putin becomes president of Russia. In 2001, 9/11, the World Trade Center is attacked and destroyed. Wikipedia is started. In 2003, the Iraq invasion occupation begins, and the mapping of the human genome is completed. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina hits New Orleans and the Gulf Coast. In 2007, the Great Recession begins. In 2008, Barack Obama is elected President of the United States. In 2009, the Great Recession officially ends. In 2010, WikiLeaks releases thousands of classified U.S. documents. The largest oil spill in the U.S. occurs. In 2011, James Mahan turns 90 years old. Congratulations. What a wonderful life. God bless you.